Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. We are back. This is an exciting time for the game because we have basically the entire set has been released at this point, and we can play with most of the cards or all the cards at this point. What we're going to do this week is we're going to talk about our three favorite cards each from the set, or at least cards that we like or think will be good. But I am going to start this week with Noah. Noah, I know you've been busy playing FAB, finally, because you sent me a message that said, hey, check out this deck. I think you'll like it. And I was like, I do like that, but maybe for later. But how has your week in FAB been?
It's been so much fun. I started last week being a bad FAB citizen and playing an Old Arcana tournament. And from literally the first game of the tournament, I was like, what am I doing with myself? Why am I not playing more FAB? And so I quickly escaped from that and went into the lab, started brewing decks. I would say about 1% of them will turn out to be good, but if I find the one good one, then I'll register that for the tournament, and that's all I need.
For people watching the video,
No,
I don't think necks are supposed to turn that
no,
far.
you
That
were
is,
supposed to
you're
let
gonna
them live in ignorance.
you're gonna break your neck one of these days, man.
Oh, it just had to happen.
Dude, I'm so flexible. What do you mean?
It was like you're like an owl over there.
Yeah,
Lucas the owl.
You got a problem, man?
Man.
We record this podcast super late at night. I got to be an owl.
Look, I will say this: the best way to play more FAB is play other card games, because every time you play other card games, you're just like, these mechanics suck. I need to go back to playing FAB. But Dan, you've been doing some testing. We have been making new channels in the Discord for the new decks. How has your week in FAB been with the new set?
It's been pretty good. All that testing was actually from like the last 2 hours, but I was traveling over the weekend, over the holiday weekend, visiting family in Florida. So I didn't play Armory this week. I didn't actually play any Flesh and Blood until today, but I watched pretty much all the calling and I read all the spoilers, all the revealed cards several times, and made some deck lists, did some brewing, did some math. So it's been good. I'm excited to actually start testing some of these theories I have. See how some of the cards work.
We have a week before Memphis, so we gotta figure out what we're playing. If it's something new or something old. Lucas.
A week?
Yeah, 1 week. 1 week to figure out what deck you're playing. If you're playing a new or old. Lucas, how's your week been in FAB?
It's been okay. Today is my first day of school, so I've been a little preoccupied getting ready for that. And like doing stuff online for my online courses. But it's been good. I played a little bit of Limited and I played a little bit of CC. And I think that this set has a lot to offer and it's really unique. And it's cool that we have good heroes that are maybe good and a bunch of new support for old heroes. And that shakes up the meta. We have LLs coming in and heroes that people thought were bad maybe don't have their bad matchups, or maybe the meta shifted and they're allowed to be good now. So it feels like it's a really exciting time to be playing FAB. So I haven't been playing as much as I'd like, but I would like to kind of get back out there and explore. I really wanted to be right now, like 3 weeks ago, when I wasn't doing anything else but playing FAB, but I was playing like lame duck format with heroes that aren't legal in a month. So it's all right. I'll hop on that wagon soon and get back to playing.
Well, this weekend's going to be fun. At least we have pre-releases.
Mhm.
I always love going to pre-releases. I think they're fun. Making the sealed decks, playing with the cards for the first time, seeing all the art, having to pick up everyone's card and read them over and over again. But yeah, so I can't wait for this weekend. I'm going to 2. Hopefully everyone who's listening is going to be able to find a pre-release to go to. But I'm going to start off with my cards because I think they're, well, it's me. I want to start. And I think they're probably maybe less interesting than some of the other ones that are picked. But I want to start with a card I haven't seen anyone talk about to the point where when I told everyone I was going to pick this card, they're like, why are you picking that card? But it's Perforate. This is a yellow assassin and warrior attack reaction. And it says you may attack with target dagger an additional time this turn. And it costs you 1 less to activate this turn. Draw a card. And it costs 1 to play. It has 3 block. I think this card is probably not good right now, but I think this card is like pretty pushed. It does a lot of things that maybe currently in the game that nothing can really take good advantage of it, or you can use it on the current daggers and they're pretty good for the ones that come out in this set. However, you have to find a way to make this draconic or play something else draconic to give it go again. And in that case, I think it's decent, but this is like a future card for me. I mean, this does everything. It refunds itself. It costs 1, but it refunds itself. It lets you swing an additional time with a dagger, which can be anything from just dealing the damage on the dagger again, or if we have decks that care about swinging the dagger multiple times, you can get additional advantages from that. It also just draws a card and replaces itself. And it's yellow in an emergency. And it's a 3 block. This card is incredibly pushed. Just maybe
that
not
card sounds
right now.
great. I don't remember it.
Yeah, no one remembers.
You don't
this
remember
card.
it because you read it and you were like, "What can I play this in now?" And then you
Yeah,
were
what do I
like,
do with
"Oh,
this?"
never mind," and you hung up the phone.
Yeah, it's more scrambling for Memphis now, so that card's not probably going to be in most of the good decks for Memphis, so not really worth spending much time on.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be an immediate card now, but this is definitely a card you pick up when it's 20 cents at a Majestic because no one's playing it, and then like half a year from now or 8 months from now, it's just like all of a sudden it's a staple in a good deck. So it's just its effect is just really good.
Yeah, any card that's 3 block and replaces itself cheaply, so like even if it's not that good, it's like just a cheap way to cycle a card is like always at least going to be somewhat relevant.
Yep, agreed. Anything else before I go to my next one? Not super spicy yet. Okay. My next card is going to be Provoke. There has been a decent amount of talk about this. This is a blue reaction. It says, and it costs 1. It says, if you are attacking with a weapon, this chain link, the defending hero reveals a card from their hand. If it's an action card, add it to the chain link as a defending card. Otherwise, they discard it. And it blocks for 3 and is a warrior attack reaction. This card is sick. This is a card I wish we had at LA last year to play because warrior has desperately needed reasons to force people to block. This is very reminiscent of one of our least favorite cards, which is Siren's Call. And Siren's Call is a monster.
Your guys' least favorite cards.
This also lets you see their hand. So if they have, reactions or they reveal a card from their hand, so they are probably going to be either a thing that they didn't want to block with or it can't be something they're going to block with unless it's like a reaction, right? And then in that case, they would discard it. So this is like just a complete punish. Like if you send an attack and they put a card in front of it and then you make them overblock this, you're playing a weapon stack, which means it's more likely that your next weapon's going to hit or they're just going to have to block out their whole hand. I don't think you get the discard effect on this very often, which just means that you get like a good card that they didn't want to block with from their hand for 1. And it's a blue. So it's like the cost of having this card in your hand or trying to keep it isn't that high or putting it in your deck. I just think this card's great.
Well,
I just hope it gets played.
Yeah, one cool application I was just thinking about is like if you're playing a warrior deck that can make agility tokens, if you're able to force out a block on some kind of generic on hit first, like I don't know, you lead with a snatch, a CNC, right? Something that forces a block, then you can provoke on your weapon thereafter. Mm-hmm. It can be like extremely disruptive, right? Especially if you're talking about that CNC example where like you lead on CNC, they block with their actions, and then you can actually maybe get the discard effect on your follow-up weapon swing. Seems like super good.
I mean, I feel like this card is just good disruption in general. Like, and on any final chain link where like your opponent just is done blocking. Like, I feel like this is especially good in something like Hatchet Story. Like, you play like some warrior decks, maybe like your opponent might try to potentially keep extra cards to like play around another attack. And this is kind of weaker there because they might not block their full amount. But like with this card in like Dawnblade Dory or whatever, on like your second attack, you attack for 3, they block for 3, and then you provoke. It's like very disruptive every time, I feel. It's very powerful. And even if it's just like you attack them for 2 and they like block with equipment or whatever, like you can still just boom, play this, give me a card.
Yeah. There are some home run scenarios like when you're swinging in for 4 and they're expecting the D react and you're just like, give me a card that doesn't cover this, and then now decide if you're still D reacting to cover it up all the way.
That seems like really good. Yeah.
So like anytime you're like have a 4 breakpoint and they wanted to do a D react, I think this thing is a monster as well.
So
it's also just a blue block.
One contrarian point though is like how often are you realistically taking damage to keep this card in your hand? Because you're talking about these decks like Hatchet Dory where you're looking to like block with some cards. It seems to me like you're only actually casting this on a turn when you already had tempo and could keep a full hand.
I think this is an excuse to take damage to keep the card. Like I think it's strong
Really?
enough to do
Yeah, it's
that.
like how you buy tempo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's how you buy tempo in the next turn. So my thought on this card is like, I have my tunic counter coming up in 2 turns. I would keep this turn going before my tunic counter's up. Then you could just play it, take some initiative, and then your tunic counter turn, you get to keep more cards because you've ripped a card out of their hand. Is like a really easy way in like a Hatchadori deck. I'd want to use this.
It's also just like ultimately like it is often just like disruption. Like it's reasonable to take, I feel like, 3 damage against any deck that you expect to block. Like any sort of mid-range matchups that's trying to go like block 2 cards, throw 2 cards. Like this card's broken, like straight up broken against that kind of strategy. Like you fire in with your last weapon for like 6 or whatever, and they like block 6 on it. Like this is like ridiculous. Like this is very, very strong. This is just like skip your opponent's turn.
It's always trading 1 card for 1 card, right? Like even if you block with it.
Well,
it's the same
it doesn't
effect,
trade
no?
a card for a card if they get block value out of a card. Like if you attack for 3
Agreed.
and then you play it and they just like show you a 3 block, then it's like.
But you're like, I don't know. Your analogy of they block for 6 on 6. Like, what if this card was just a card that gave +4, for example, right? We have like 1
Well,
cost
so like
cards that give
let's say
+4.
you're playing as Florian and you attack for 6,
Mm-hmm.
and their hand is 3 block felling in a blue, and you play this. You just like say they don't get their turn next turn. Like the value of the card is like never going to be more than just like a card for a card, basically. But like,
But they could just like set the felling and it's whatever.
sorry.
But they could just like set the felling in that example, and then.
But then you get
whatever.
a full grade.
Yeah, but then
to push
you just
damage.
like give them. That's an example of like an actual correct use of the word tempo in this game. Is like you do just say like, hold on, you have to do this next turn. Like it is powerful. Like action points are worth something. Like if your opponent draws up next turn and they have like plow under, then there's like actual factual like additional value there. Or just like late
I am
game.
also suspicious.
I think
that,
it's like block with a card because like now you have a full 5-card hand. It's not like you're playing a deck that sets up a board state. Like you're attacking into them next turn.
Yeah. Then you just like throw your hand.
Yeah.
I feel like in like those late game scenarios, like this card's going to be a lot better than you might think. Like
Sure.
it's also it's just like it's a blue block 3 that trades for a card. Like
Yeah, it's like a no-brainer. You include it in your deck. I just don't think it propels those decks.
yeah,
to
I'm
any
not
height.
sure if it's a power card, but I think it could be in some matchups, and I think it's just like such a strict upgrade.
I think it depends on what the meta looks like, obviously,
Yeah,
as
I
well.
agree.
And what the warrior deck is. I'm just using like Hatchadori as like an example that would enjoy playing this deck. Because every time Hatchadori gets to play with more than 2 cards, their chances of swinging 3 times is like infinitely high. So this card might only buy 1 card, but it might actually buy enough health to let you swing an extra time on the next round. And that's like way more value there because the deck can almost always swing 3 times. It's more about like, can I guarantee this? Is it worth it with my hand? Like, because usually you have to keep like a whole extra card to pitch to pay for the next swing. And so like that's only worth it if you're not taking any damage, right? If you're not taking any damage, then this card actually got you a card from their hand and an extra swing out of your weapon. And warrior decks are infinitely stronger the more cards they have in their hand. That's just how they work. It's just not always worth keeping those cards in your hand versus blocking with them because it's just damage most of the time. But I think the card's great. Anytime you get to disrupt what your opponent wants to do is typically a good card. And the cost of running it is very low. It's just like an auto include. Okay, the next one I'm sure everyone will agree is an amazing card. It is Quick Dodge Flexors. It is a legendary equipment that is generic that came in this set. It effect is defense reaction, cost 1. Add this to the active chain link as a defending card. It has 2 base defense. This chain link at the beginning of the end phase, if this is defended this turn, destroy it. That does mean that it can jump in front of as many things as you can pay for with it. There has been a little bit of backlash on this card, which I kind of agree with. This is just a straight upgrade. This card is just one of those cards we haven't seen in a while. That's just like, if there are aggro decks in meta, put in deck every time. It essentially turns a blue into block for 6, which if the blue already blocked for 3, then this is essentially blocking for 3 more. It does allow you to basically block for 6 with 1 card, is a good way to look at it. However, if you are running a Tunic deck, it gets a little more interesting because sometimes you block for 8 off of just your Tunic counter as well, which I think is pretty powerful. But this is just adding, it's pretty simple. It's just adding more block to decks against go wide decks. And it's just a strict upgrade to basically anything anyone was running in the boot slot before this.
It also can go above as well. Like theoretically, if your
Yeah,
opponent attacks you like 5 times, this can block like 5 or 6 times. It can be crazy. In a deck like Enigma, or just anything that can play cards on your opponent's turn, this can be value. Like I imagine your opponent goes like 5 wide as Zen, and you like pitch 2 blues, activate this 5 times, and play Waning Vengeance, and your 2 cards just block 4, or your 3 cards just block 14. Like that's pretty good.
You also have a blue outlet for Waning Vengeance too, right? To ensure that you get the shield after.
Yeah, that was included in the value. I mean, it's even more, but like you also get to, you can block 2 breakpoints with this, and then AB like against Aurora. I can imagine they have a Channel Lightning value. You can AB 1 on a burn up shock, and then this can block a Starfall, and then can block an attack later, and does a lot.
Yeah, even if this didn't block like a million times in one turn, these boots would still be good. Just for the fact that there will be decks like back in the previous meta with Dio that you would run these boots and Tunic pretty comfortably and be like, I have Tunic counter up, I have these boots up, I'm protected from all of your boom grenades. Like I will just block for 3 on your 4, take 1. Oh, no boom grenade. Okay. And you just would keep doing that. And then eventually they'd be like, boom grenade. You'd be like, no, boots. And then keep playing out. Like it being a D-react is pretty great for any pumps, over what they're expecting to happen.
Yeah, it might even be good against like Assassin. If they're trying to like buff daggers, you can do this in response. If that's like a...
Yeah, I was trying to say, it's really good just the fact that it starts in play. Like it kind of counters the Assassin gloves and like, what are the gloves cats used to play?
Breaking Scales.
Yeah, breaking scales. Like it was always very one-sided, where it's just like, are you going to over-respect every attack for the game because they have this effect that just sits there, and now you have kind of the reverse Uno of that effect.
Ancestral Empowerment as well. It's like another.
These boots are just incredibly pushed. Like there's no other way to say it. Like they're a way higher power level than typically the generic items that we've been getting in decks. So you have to have it. Like you have to own a pair of these. Like this is like a first card in a while where it's like every single player in the game needs to own a pair of these boots moving forward for probably a really long time.
Balance.
Yeah, it's like Tunic level, I think.
Yeah, I feel like Balance was the last time we had something like this. Where like even,
and that's not even, it doesn't even
balance,
apply
right?
anymore. It's better than Balance.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they did ban like every single card.
Yeah.
possibly draw off of.
Like you could run Skull Cap and be fine. Like nothing really compares to this thing, right?
Yeah, this is the new Tunic where it's like, now you have 2 cards. You need to own a Tunic, which has kind of gone up and down recently if you actually need to buy one as a new player. Like, do you have to own a Tunic? There's a bunch of decks where you don't really need to own a Tunic.
Like...
Sure, but every player has to own one of these now.
Sure. We'll see. I think there's a lot of good boots that decks have, but yeah, I think
mech players are on their own island. If you play mech, you don't have to own these boots.
Who? I don't know. There's none of those players left.
Yeah. I think
this should be a staple for a very long time because aggro decks are very prominent in this game and they will always be printed in almost every set they come out with. And you're just going to be like, well, I will put my boots in.
I mean, I guess red light decks don't really want to play this.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was talking with Yuanji about the equipment thing. I'm sure y'all have heard his tirades about how equipment is way too pushed in this game. But I think these shoes are another example of where like the gap between someone starting to play FAB versus like a veteran player is even more widened, of like knowing when to, like the more powerful equipment that exists and more powerful like start and play effects that exist. I think the gap between people who have practiced a lot and are familiar with the various situations, they just like will extract way more value from these types of effects than someone who's like new and just starting. So I think it's nice from like our POV that they introduce these powerful equipments, but I'm not sure how good it is from like a new player perspective, not just from their wallet talking, but like from the actual gameplay.
To be fair, I like these boots, but they also scare me with how strong they are. Yeah. And that's just like, it's at first glance. Like we could play a bunch of games. There can be decks that this could be a cornerstone to fix matchups for them that make decks better. There's like a whole bunch of things that could happen because of how powerful these boots are. And moving forward, anything that can generate resources on your opponent's turn lets these be even more powerful. I think of like
Flip 2G.
Kakara, yeah, 2-chi right now.
You can play like a defensive deck. I don't know if this is like a real thing, but like you could play like a fatigue deck and you just like play epots as like your whole turn. Like seriously, like if some decks win con against you is to like go in the late game and go like 7 or 8 wide, you just be like play 2 epots and then my boot. Like that's like I just like block 3 cards, play epot 2 times throughout the game. And then like that's at the end of the game I just like pop both and block 8. Like that's pretty fucked up, man.
You can visit the anvil and just block with the boots the whole game.
Oh, dude, yeah, Olympia's eating so good this set. He's got a new hat, new shoes.
Yeah, dude, Olympia best.
But I don't think we've. I don't know. I'm expecting these boots to be pretty major in metagames moving forward.
Yeah, I think all the equipment in this set are kind of super high impact.
Yep.
Cool. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Sure. Mine have kind of an obvious theme of being draconic and or ninja cards. First, I want to talk about Blood Runs Deep a little bit. This is a 2-cost red draconic ninja attack action. Attacks for 2, blocks for 3. Those stats are like completely fake once you read the card, though. It says this costs 1 less to play for each draconic chain link you control. So at once you have 2 chain links, this card is free. When this attacks a hero, each dagger you control deals 1 damage to them. If damage is dealt this way, the dagger has hit. Destroy the daggers, go again. I'm sure this card's been talked about a ton. This is like bread and butter for Syndra, right? Because your goal is to kind of get your daggers into the graveyard after attacking with them. That way you can buy them back without closing the chain, so you can do it all for free. This card does that very well, and it does it on chain link 3. It has a lot of like big combo potential with things like Spreading Flames, because you can do this, buy back your daggers, and then swing them again.
Poison Blade.
It combos with a different card I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
What was that, Lucas?
The card you're going to talk about, I think.
Spoiler.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then the thing that I really like about it is the 2 attack in the bottom left corner means we have a Lynx target. And if you ever played a Pouncing Lynx deck, like having Salt the Wound and Tenacity is like quite good. But as soon as you have another like high priority Lynx target, especially like a consistency piece like this, it's just like extreme value.
It's just like yellow,
which we saw with like blue bonds back in the day with Zen.
Or like yellow belittle in Fi. That's a classic.
Yeah, like yellow belittle, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think this is like that kind of card. So yeah, this is like high on my list. I haven't really played with Syndra yet, but the couple games I have, this card has felt extremely good every time I've seen it.
Yeah, I think it's like kind of cool how in this set they've really shown how Majestics are better than commons and rares, where it's like every common and rare you throw 1 dagger. Blood Runs Deep, you throw 2 daggers. It's
Except for
like,
these legendary rares.
Yeah, true. I mean, those function kind of
That's
like
the only
Majestics.
exception.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Any
That's
other
a good
thoughts?
card.
All right, I'll go next. Oath of Loyalty has to be like a top pick for me. This is a 0-cost red draconic attack action. Attacks for 4, blocks for 3. This may only be played if it's the first action of your turn. When this is played until end of turn, you may only play cards that are draconic, and it says go again. This is just such a windmill slam Fi card, obviously. That's why I'm talking about it. The restriction of like only having draconic is like really no big deal for him. Typically you're playing very few non-draconic cards. Even if you are, you can turn the draconic potentially. I think this will have play in almost every draconic deck, just because the upside is so high. Like having a 0 for 4 block 3 with go again is just completely absurd in this game. But in 5, this is just like pretty big power jump. So like his bread and butter plays are like a head jab, a draconic head jab, and a blue. That's 2 card 7 because you go 3 go again, Ember Blade plus Phoenix Flame. This immediately upgrades to 2 card 8. But this goes crazy with Lava Burst, which is like Fi's only power play pre-hunted, which is like you do a draconic head jab with a blue, and Lava Burst is 3 card 13 because you have the Phoenix Flame, and then Lava Burst gets bumped by your Shuko. And this card introduces 3-card 14 in FAB, which is Chase the Tail numbers, which is very, very strong, as we've seen. Like, any game's end resolves 2 to 3 Chase the Tail lines, he just wins. So having this power back in FAB is pretty exciting for me.
Do you think this card is like auto 3-up because of the restriction that you can only play one of it, or would you ever play less than 3?
Oh, in FAB, I'm slamming 3 all day. It's like not close with the current card pool, at least. Like, you just have to optimize around resolving that 3-card 14 as much as you can.
The great part is, if you draw 2 of them, it blocks for 3, and you just put the other one in the blocks part of the game, and then you
Wait, can you not play 2 in the same turn?
No.
Why?
No.
You can only play
First
that as your
action.
first action.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So like the downsides are like what we were saying there. You can't if you draw a bunch of them. But like FAB is kind of struggling for 3 blocks, so like not the biggest downside. If you draw all 3, like sure, like you got caught. If you draw 2, you can just set 1. But if you're doing things like Mask of Momentum, it can be awkward if you draw it off of that. But like just play Pouncing Lynx because Pouncing Lynx is insane.
Cool.
Agreed.
Okay. Last card, which I'm sure everyone will weigh in on because this card is kind of absurd, I think, as an aggro player. That is the Blood Splattered Vest. It's a new legendary equipment. It's an Assassin Ninja chest. It blocks for 1 with Blade Break. And this card says, whenever a dagger you control hits, you may gain a resource and put a stain counter on this. Then if there are 3 or more stain counters on this, destroy it. So yeah, base value, if you're playing a dagger deck, this is basically 3 tunics pretty on demand. Like you can get them as early as you want. You can kind of choose not to use it if you don't need those resources right away. And this thing goes crazy with flick knives because if your opponent doesn't have prevention effects, you can just grab that resource whenever you need it at the cost of your dagger, which is kind of sick. This can enable like some crazy combos where you're doing 2 to 3 resources in 1 turn. But I think more typically it'll like enable play patterns where you're adding a 4th resource to your curve to do some kind of like power play.
Yeah, I think we'll end up referencing this card when talking about future cards in the segment. But just, yeah, the fact that you can get more than 1 resource out of it in 1 turn is just like such a absurd power spike that you can essentially do on demand. Like I was saying earlier about the shoes, this seems like another equipment where people who have seen lots of game states will be able to extract so much value from this equipment just because of the power. While it's still, the floor is, you can always use it like a tunic, just letting you run a 4 resource turn.
Yeah,
and just to compare, like we used to unironically play Blossom of Spring in a lot of ninja decks and like half the matchups. Like that's just 1 resource once on demand. This thing is 3 times or 2 times in a block. Like this thing is insane in like certain matchups and certain decks.
I'm not sure if this will end up panning out in reality too, but I can see where opponents are trying to like deny this card. Or like your opponent may block when they don't want to block because they fear the potential of you hitting with daggers.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't flick, then it's just like pointless gesture at that point. I think this card is disgusting. The fact that you can do all 3 in 1 turn if you need to is completely broken. It's 9 turns worth of tunics immediately from the beginning of the game.
Man. It lets you get so creative too with your lines.
Yeah, this is very pushed. This is a very, very good card.
Do you think
they look like a Sai and they're like, no, not once per turn, every turn.
Yeah.
Or I mean,
do you think this card is as good if there's no flick knives in the game?
Well, the answer to that question is obviously no, but this card would maybe still be good without flick knives if that's what you're trying to ask.
No, I'm saying like, does it go down to 0.9 of its power, or does it go down to like 0.3 of its power?
Do we still have flick effects or just no flick?
Yeah, like all the cards in the game are legal. They just like ban flick knives the gloves.
I think it's 0.9 for me personally, because if my opponent is spending time blocking my daggers,
that's almost better. Like
that's what I was gonna say too. Yeah, I want my opponent to think they can stop this. And want to stop this. Whatever makes them block the daggers.
You just play 3 throw daggers as your flick knives. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So wait, we have to mention that Dan referred to this card as better than Kasaya, and I interrupted Lucas's pop off.
Yeah, okay, it's like not better than
Yeah.
that. Like that's absolutely ridiculous.
Kasaya says once per turn.
It
gain a
doesn't.
resource.
It just doesn't.
It doesn't. That's not
Oh,
true.
it doesn't. My bad.
You've only
my
played
bad.
with it for a year.
Like, it's like so explicitly not once per turn. Like you mentioned
Oh,
earlier
that's so
in this
true.
pod that
Oops.
transcend on their turn twice with flexors. Like
Yeah, that's pretty silly.
wait, flexors is like a Zen state.
Okay, so yeah,
Kinda.
I think that the simplest reason why this card's better than Kasaya is the fact that it literally doesn't matter what cards you draw. Whereas like Kasaya is better when you draw the cards that are already good. This card can bail you out when you draw hands that are not good.
Well,
They're just different, and one
it's
of
pretty
them.
different. Yeah, like Kasaya, you're like building around a different resource curve.
Yeah,
It's just very different. Like Kasaya, you're like building around this like once every 2 turns curve because of how many chi exists in the game. Where this one, it's like you want to have a deck that functions and that has this like some like consistent plus lines that you can filter dollar if you need to, and then some like really plus ones like
Kasaya
trading up
also
to a CNC or something.
Kasaya also just like makes this end state and can be resolved like 9 times throughout the game in a slow match, like and blocks 2. Like
So the advantage of this chest though is like I don't even know what a slow match is because they're already dead, so I don't have to worry about.
sure,
that.
but like Kasaya can do that too. Like
Yeah, sometimes.
Very
if you
easy.
draw
I think-
I don't really think they're worth comparing. Like if you're
yeah,
playing
like
Zen, you're
one of
playing
them is good
Kasaya.
and one of them is not.
Dude, arguing is OP. What do you mean?
Yeah, like
I-
one of them is.
No,
clearly
I
better.
wanted
This
to
is
compare with
actual just
Tunic, which
rage
I think
bait. Like
this card is just like
ridiculous. Like one of them is so obviously a better card. They're like comparable in the matchups where the vest is best.
they're really entirely different. I think Tunic's the one to compare with, and I think this card like dumpsters Tunic.
I don't think you can compare it with Tunic. Like
I-
Tunic is you have to play towards having your turn cycle lined up where you get the counter and then now you can use it.
Well, that's why I think you can compare it. Is because like the difference is like
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just way better.
yeah, you
Because
can
Tunic, like,
say
you have
that.
to
I think
line
that's
up.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's worth
Mhm.
comparing to Tunic if you want to make it look good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just like leagues ahead.
Yeah,
That's the
that's,
goal,
that's good.
I did want to say on the Kasaya argument, I feel like the resource you often get from Kasaya is not truly an additional resource. It is a resource that makes up for the fact that you have to use one of your blues for your hero ability. And so like if you've played with this chess piece quite often just feels like a bonus resource.
Yeah, but that like
It's not like-
doesn't make it not broken though. Like
I don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't make it broken, but it's more of a fixture of making the deck function is having Kasaya in the deck. The Zen state trumps it, in my opinion. That's what really puts it over. But like
Mhm.
without the resource off the Kasaya, Zen would not function properly.
I
it's
feel
more
that's
of like
reverse argument then, because that's like saying that like Crown of Providence is better than Crown of Seeds was in Oldhim, because without Crown of Seeds, Oldhim's unplayable. So Crown of Providence is clearly better. Like that's
I don't know. That feels more like it's just
like yeah, Zen
fixing
doesn't work without
the
Kasaya
function of the
because
deck.
it's broken. Like it's ridiculous.
I think it feels way more powerful to play this chess piece when you're playing a deck with daggers, because you can scale your hand pretty infinitely by having 3 additional resources, especially with Mask and a bunch of other triggers. It makes this feel like incredibly more powerful than just providing you with resources in like a normal game.
I think that you guys are wrong. I just won't entertain this. Like this is crazy.
I
to me.
don't think anyone's getting value out of comparing. With
No,
this.
no. I under.
They go in different decks.
I would need this to be like a professional debate where like everybody states their exact opinion, because like
Yeah.
Kasaya is not
I
as
think-
good as this card is
I
ridiculous.
agree. We should prepare papers for.
I think
For next
yeah,
week to
the
review.
Kasaya resource generation is not as good, but the Kasaya Zen state is like worth infinite
and
amounts.
the
sometimes.
2 block.
So that's
It's
why.
also I don't know. I feel like if you just go through like, so it's also like, is it the difference between having it and not having it for both of them? Because like I feel like
The point is
Zen
just to make
without
a bold
Kasaya is
statement
so much
that this
worse
card
than
is very
these decks
strong.
without Pleasant Chest.
See what you've
Yeah,
started
yeah.
doing?
These decks are playable without it, whereas Zen is unplayable without Kasaya. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How?
I think that's a Zen problem though.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's above Zen, man. I'm glad we had this talk.
Yeah, Zen's
The comments will agree with me. It's okay.
Sure.
So those are my cards.
You guys are just rage baiting me. I understand.
Next.
You can go next, Lucas, now that you're
Okay.
all riled up.
No, it's the worst time to get me talking. All right. So my first card that I wanted to talk about is the only. Actually, it's not the only. It's one of 2 chaos cards in the set. It is Schism of Chaos. It is the Fable for this set. Let me find it real quick. Yeah. It is a legendary blue pitch chaos resource. It is a gem, so obviously it doesn't attack, doesn't block, anything like that. When this is pitched, each hero shuffles, then puts the top card of their deck face down into their arsenal. So this is like kind of an innocuous card, but I feel like this actually is one of the reasons to play Chaos. Like I feel like people kind of gloss over these like legendary effects, but this is an incredibly powerful card. Like this is it's just a 2-for-1 if you can use it in the right situation. It's a little bit awkward, obviously, because your opponent can just not have an arsenal, and then this can be negative. But I've seen a lot of situations where this card just like absolutely.
How is it negative in that situation?
If-
Isn't it just even?
Sure.
If you both get
I
cards.
mean, negative like compared to them not having an arsenal. Playing it is not necessarily a net negative in that spot. It's just like it's bad that they get an arsenal. It also can be a net negative if
I don't even know if that's true because like you want them to have an arsenal because you're going to threaten it most turns.
so I feel like like I guess yes, sure. I don't know. I think it's an obviously powerful card, right? It can just be plus a card. In a lot of these new assassin decks, they're scaling a lot better as well. So that like plus a whole card can be worth a lot. And like Noah mentioned, giving your opponent an arsenal is not always the biggest deal because a lot of the time you are throwing arsenal disruption anyway. But this is just like crazy value on a card like this. We haven't really seen gems ever like have this kind of like full extra card effect. We've seen things get close in the past, but this is I feel like something that people aren't talking about enough. But I feel like this could definitely be a reason to actually go into one of the Chaos Assassins compared to something like new. Like just getting this extra power card in your deck is a pretty big deal, I think.
Yeah, it's like they saw the Codex of Frailty haters, and
Yeah.
then the people complaining that gems should never be playable because they'll cost too much,
Mhm.
and they're just like, well, what if we did both?
Yeah. What if we made the gem the best card of the deck?
It's kind of funny. It feels like they've been like, there's been more and more pushback against Fableds in recent years than there ever has been, and Fables just keep getting like better. Like we just keep getting.
I mean, even Will of Arcana in the last set, right? Wizards suck, but that
Yeah.
card is like insane.
Yeah, that card's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually
I think
worth
for
the
now it
card.
makes sense though, as is like a reason to play Chaos, like you're saying.
Yeah,
Like, this
I
card
do
is
like
so
that.
absurdly pushed. Like you pitch a card, you draw a card. Like
It's pretty.
and the shuffle's like not nothing either. I think it's cool that Chaos specifically gets access to shuffling your opponent's deck. This is something I've like.
Mhm.
I don't know if I've wanted it for a while. Like I've wanted to personally be able to shuffle my opponent's deck.
Yeah. It's
I don't know
cool.
how I
Yeah.
feel about
It,
getting my deck shuffled.
yeah, you
depending
play
on what I'm
against like
playing.
Kano or Verdance or like Aurora if you're trying to fatigue them or whatever. Like just any matchup that might be trying to stack you. This is pretty cool effect.
Yeah.
Okay. My next card, let me scroll down to it, but my next card is the Kabuto, the ninja hat. I have it here. Kabuto of Imperial Authority. This is a legendary warrior equipment head. It has 2 block and blade break, so when you block with it, it dies. And it says, when this defends until end of turn, opponents can't attack with weapons. So this card is, first of all, obviously very powerful in the Warrior Mirror. You know, you're playing against something like Hatchet Dory. They go, you know, Spill Blood, Hatchet for 4 with 3 cards in hand or whatever the hell. And you block with Kabuto. You can block like, you know, multiple attacks potentially. This card can be absolutely absurd in some of these Warrior Mirrors. It also has a lot of use into other matchups. Things like Syndra come to mind, where your opponent might have something like a Poison Blade, Blood Runs Deep, or Spreading Flames kind of turn lined up, and this just bones their entire turn. And kind of
It's also boned all of my hype for Syndra.
yeah, like it just can
Because
block.
it came out right after all of her cards. I was like,
Yeah.
Syndra looks so sick. I was like, oh, I guess I'll just never beat Warrior. That's fine.
Yeah, it can pretty easily block like 10 to 12 on those turns like pretty often, and that's pretty insane in some of these aggro matchups. And then there's a bunch of random matchups where I think it could be good. Things like Aurora, it can block a breakpoint and then say Starfall can't attack. Let's say your opponent has like a Channel Lightning Valley or a Burn Up Shock or potentially both up. This can be a lot of value there. Just blocking like you can give this and your Grain on a 4 attack on a Channel Lightning Valley turn, and then you know they can't swing their Starfall. This can be worth quite a lot there. Also into Enigma, it's interesting. It's very powerful into Enigma. It's hard to line up. But if your opponent has a mirror guy and a 10k out, obviously this can block a lot of damage there. It'll be interesting to see how it quite lines up, because it does a lot of interesting things where it's pretty easy to play around, but a lot of the time your opponent can't take lines because of this card, right? Your opponent plays a Spectral Manifestations pitching a blue with their Mage Master boots up, and there's always the threat that you might just block Kabuto, and then their 10k can't swing, for example. But they can also bait you and things like that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how powerful it actually is, but there's a lot of these matchups where I think it might be very good, in addition to a bunch of matchups where it just like is good. Like you play a lot of these decks, like this will just block some damage, right? Like you play against Florian, for example, and they go like activate Grasp, swing Gloomveil. This is just block 5 on a hat, right? You're just blocking 2, and then you can block the Reaping Blade. Viscerai players are moving away from swinging their sword as much, but you can just, again, try to just block 5 with this. And I think that kind of floor in a lot of matchups is kind of what's going ignored by this card. Just any matchup that's going, go again, attack into weapon, this can kind of bone, like something like Fi, even potentially. Like if you expect them to throw their weapon, you just say, block this, -1 chain link, and you -3 damage. And that's a pretty reasonable turn. So I'm not sure if it will be meta defining now, but I think this is a really powerful tool for Warriors moving forward, and already has a lot of application. So this is, I think, one of the best cards in the set that people like recognize as powerful, and we're talking about a little bit, but it's not getting nearly as much hype as I thought it was, or I thought it should be, because this card is really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think this card's really good. It also reminds me that this is the first set in a long time where I'm like, I think I need a playset of everything in the set, because there are so many pieces in this set that are like, this is probably going to be busted later. This is probably going to be played for a very long time. Even like,
that's a banger.
I'm not always like, oh, I need the Fable. I usually get them. But in this case, I'm like, I have to own this Fable, because like eventually this will probably just be great, and I need to have it now before that happens. And so it's like, this is the first one I'm just like, yeah, I have to get a playset of it.
Yeah. And like you have to buy
good.
every legendary, because every legendary is good. And every
And if you want to play Olympia, you have to buy a playset of every legendary.
But Kabuto, I do think it's pretty good. It does kind of annoy me if Warriors ever become popular and you have to play Warrior Mirrors with you're both having this hat on.
Yeah.
Just sounds horrible to me.
I have a point. I had thought about this.
Okay.
So the thing is, in the Warrior Mirror, it's actually not that cringe, because you just both have it.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a point in the game where, okay, I Kabuto your big turn, you Kabuto my turn.
I think this is going to be cringe for the Warrior Mirrors, where that's like not true. Like this is going to be, I feel like
but that's something you can do. You can like build your decks such that you like bluff them and then play like some stances after, right? Like they think you're going to swing more, and then you like play some permanents.
Sure, there is counterplay. I'm just saying, I feel like if you're playing like Kasai versus like Sabers Bolton or whatever. First of all, rest in peace, Sabers Bolton, because holy shit, you cannot beat any of your same class in theory is crazy. But like I feel like there are going to be
with like 1 Lumina.
Yeah, like even like regular Bolton, man, like this card,
I don't know,
really broken. Like you go your double Lumina turns, like if you don't have Spirit up, like they just get just like blocked with 1 card. Like that's ridiculous. I think in non-exact mirror Warriors, it will be frustrating. Like Dawnblade Dory versus Hatchet Dory. Like one of you guys cares about this a lot more. But I don't think it's that deep, because it is pretty good against most Warriors. So some Warriors getting hosed by it more than others is...
It's worse for the Warriors who have like a big power spike card, like Blood on Your Hands, for example. Yeah. Or I mean, I think Blood on Your Hands is like really the example. Like you just wait. You're just like, you can never play Blood on Your Hands in this matchup. Yeah, like I never have to use the helmet. I will sit here with it.
When you play the new mirror, you have to like side out levels and surgicals and stuff. Like,
why is it not? I think if it's mirrors, like Hatchet Dory v Hatchet Dory, it's okay. The thing that would make me a little bit suspicious is that in some fast Warrior mirrors, I could see this being a feels bad, where like you have like maybe 2 win cons. You can like either just race them down, or you can make a big power turn, and like both players have access to both. And it's like, well, I got behind early, and then I tried to have my big power spike turn. That's what I was setting for the whole game for, but I just couldn't do that because they have Kabuto. You could argue that just.
I think you're just like a clown if you're setting up for a power spike turn when they have this.
Yeah, I agree. I was saying you could argue it just makes for better gameplay, but that's where
exactly.
Uneven. That's where
this is what I've been saying the whole episode is that like all the new equipment just
like,
makes for better gameplay. Like it makes for like better
because it's so powerful. It's like extremely skill intensive at both sides.
Yeah,
like if you fumble the way you block with it, like you just threw the game. Whereas if you like nail it and are patient and get it right, like it's a game winning piece of equipment. And same thing, if you like bait it out, like
I love this card. I think the design is sweet. I like it. It's very good. And then I'll go for my next card. Move us along a little bit. My last card is Sharpen Senses. This is another warrior card. This is a 0-cost yellow warrior action aura that blocks 3. It has go again. And then it says your weapon attacks get +1 power. If their power is greater than twice their base, they get go again. And then at the beginning of your end phase, destroy this. So you play this at the start of your turn. It's a 0-cost aura. And then for the rest of your turn, all your weapons get +1. And if they have power greater than their base power, then they get go again. This card, I think, is incredibly powerful already in at least one archetype, that being Hatchet Dory. It's pretty reasonable in Kasai. It's a yellow 3-block that can give you go again and +2 for the turn. But in Hatchet Dory, not only can it be worth 3 power throughout the turn, but getting 2 go again effects off of 1 card is not something we've really seen before. In the past, in order to go wide, you would need a go again card plus a go again card. And every turn you need a pitch card. So if you wanted to play something like a Blade Flurry or a Spill Blood and go 3 wide, then you would need multiple go again cards, a blue, and likely your Tunic up as well, plus that card. Whereas now you can have, let's say, blue card, Sharpen Senses, and Spill Blood with your Tunic up. And you can just throw 3 hatchets under a Spill Blood turn very, very easily. Or, you can do the same with Blade Flurry, but all these things. And then it also has a very good floor of being a yellow 3-block that can just buff your weapons. And it's pretty easy to just turn this into 1 go again effect. And even if it's just giving you 2 power throughout the turn and one of your weapons gets go again from this, even by itself, that's a pretty reasonable effect. And then also, I think in the future, this card might just be broken. You look at a hero like Fang. If you can play something like Power Stance and then play this on your turn, you can just throw your daggers a billion times and they'll always have go again. So if you can just keep letting them attack again with whatever sort of effects, this can go crazy. And I'm not sure if Fang will necessarily be the best thing to do that, but any warrior in the future that can make use of go again multiple times throughout a turn, I think is going to like this card a lot because it can be multiple power and multiple action points, which on a single card is not something that we've really seen in the past, especially not for warrior.
Yep, card's great. I almost chose it for my top 3. It was one of the ones I was looking at.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this except for the fact that it's cool they made it weapon and not dagger.
Yes.
Another example of majestic power creep,
Yeah, one real quick thing. I misread this card when I first saw it. It does say greater than double their base. Or sorry, excuse me. Yeah, it says greater than twice their base, which is important.
Yeah, so if your base is 1 and you give it +1, it doesn't get to go again.
Exactly. But if your base is 2, you need to get it to 5, etc. That's like the problem. It is a lot easier to do because that just means you have to double it because this is already giving them +1, which is very important. So, Blade Flurry on a 2-power attack or Sharpen Steel on a Dawn Blade is always going to turn this on.
Yep. Cool. Noah?
All right. I'm going to start with, it's like technically 2 cards, but they're basically the same card as the Retrieve mechanic. So there is, the 2 cards are Upsticks and Pickup. Upsticks is let me find it on the screen here. I had been scrolling to find y'all cards when we were talking about them. Okay, Upsticks and Run is a 0-cost Assassin Ninja hybrid card. Says you may retrieve a dagger from your graveyard. So notably, you're not forced to fulfill this part to play the card. Your next dagger attack this turn gets +4 and has go again. And then Pick Up the Point has the same retrieve keyword. When it attacks, you may retrieve a dagger from your graveyard.
By paying
and
1
it's a 0 for 3. What's up?
By paying a resource, that's important. The
By
retrieve
paying a
word
resource.
is
Yeah.
pay a resource to equip it.
Yeah, pay a resource to equip it. Yes, this is the reminder text. I'm curious, actually, now that you bring that up, if they'll keep printing this on the future, or if just like we have to memorize that retrieve means pay a resource to equip it. And if in the future maybe there's a design space where you're going to retrieve non-daggers, but as of right now, it's limited to just daggers. So the first thing to note about these cards is, as Lucas mentioned, they're modal. You can either pay a resource for some benefit, or you can just treat these as 0 cost on rate go again attacks. The upsticks being a non-attack means it introduces some potential like warmongers as a drawback. I think Ninja and Assassin have kind of free rolled warmongers in the past, but this is now a card that potentially conflicts with that strategy. While I think the power level of the card probably outweighs it, the flexibility of being able to play multiple of these to buff a single dagger, the flexibility that you can flick your dagger and then get it back from the graveyard, as well as the ability to buff. We have so many different assassin daggers that all have various effects, which could be relevant based on different game states. Bumping that up to 5 means like no one's really blocking 5 on a dagger. I don't know. Just like something in our psychology means like you barely block assassin daggers for 1. I don't think you're blocking them for 5. So yeah, I think upsticks buffing the dagger means your assassin daggers are going to hit more, and you just have good value for buffing daggers when you're playing Ninja. And then you also have pick up the point being a chain extender for effects that care about the combat chain. You could like make this draconic for it to be a draconic chain link in Ninja. It's a way for assassin to be able to leverage using their whole hand. If they just disrupted the opponent so they have tempo, they want to be able to convert their whole hand on offense, as well as be able to retrieve things that they've flicked before. I just think the whole retrieve mechanic is like super fun, as well as being powerful.
Yeah, 0 for 4 is a big deal. It's a very good card.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, having 4 go-agains in these classes is like kind of huge. I mean, Ninja has a couple, but this is like, as long as you have a dagger, you just get 4 go-again. I think the 1 cost is like super nice on these. Because like a lot of these daggers cost 1, right? So you're doing like dagger plus a 1 cost. It's like
or
when you don't have that 1 cost. Yeah, but I'm talking about the 1 cost right now. Like when you don't have that 1 cost finisher, you have like a resource sink that like actually does something.
Yep. Yeah, and the synergy with flick knives, of course, is you can use your chess piece. When you flick the dagger, you can get it back, and even though it's like technically a once per turn action printed on the card, it becomes like a new card when you re-equip it from the graveyard. So you can use it again and potentially swing 3 times in 1 turn.
Very good.
Yeah, very modular. Very like.
Yeah, super cool that these are like
creative
commons and rares, and you can run a bunch of them. I think it would have been sad if they introduced the retrieve mechanic and it was like just 1 card. It'd be kind of lame. So yeah, happy they did that. My next card is another Assassin Ninja hybrid. It's pain in the backside. The art on this card is quite brutal. I can't imagine being stabbed like that. But the effect is another example of majestic power creep, I think. It's a 0 cost, 3 attack, 2 defense, go again. When this hits a hero, target dagger you control deals 1 damage to them. If damage is dealt this way, the dagger is hit. So I think this is another example. I think they honestly did an amazing job with all of the Assassin Ninja hybrid cards where they really feel like they serve different roles in the 2 different classes while being strong in both. The ability for this to not break your dagger, I think, is huge for the assassin. As I mentioned before, the flexibility of being able to flip between all these different effects that could be useful, and doing it it's interactive in a sense of your opponent can block the pain in the backside, but it's more difficult to stop than just a simple dagger, because I think there's like more real downside than throwing a piece of equipment in front of a mist blade, for example. You can throw 1 block in front of that, but this is going to demand basically a whole card if you want to stop that effect. And it just being like an on-rate card means, I think, you're happy if your opponent blocks it, and you're also very happy if they don't block it, because who knows what kind of trouble they could be in if they let the dagger effect proc.
Yeah, this kind of a theme with the pain in the backside and the dagger pumps is just like making your opponent block the dagger with real cards, which is like a really big deal because we haven't seen that before. Where like in the past it was like whatever, the daggers basically always hit or they get blocked by equipment, and so they're on a lot. Where your equipment is when you choose to stop them, but with these it's really interesting because you can like ask your opponent. You can say, "I'm playing assassin. Would you like to give me cards before I throw disruption?" And it's like it's really hard to convince somebody to like block 5 on a piercing dagger when you might just CNC them afterwards. Or the same is true with this card. It's really interesting. I think that you kind of present these sorts of questions that they haven't really been able to present in this way before.
It's very interesting, but it worries me about Assassin because one of the drawbacks of Assassin has been it's been hard to make the deck in a way where you can play a 4 or 5 card hand. But there's quite a lot of things in this set that really alleviate that problem, where this is like one of the great cards for that. Like you're playing new, you throw this card and it's like, do you want to block for 3 on this, or do you want me to have go again, off my dagger? And it's just like such a problem because you're like, fine, I won't block it. But then you're still taking 3 and like free damage is how Assassin wins. And then they give their next thing go again and a +1. It's essentially a 4 at this point. Then they play the blue. Even if they don't have go again, this is already a 0 for 4 go again at that point. It's just like, this is like one of those cards that you're looking at. You're like, oh, it's pretty good. And it's like the way it functions in new is like really powerful.
Yeah, this card is like kind of terrifying in Assassin, and a Ninja, it's like maybe just the best head jab because sometimes it's 4. And if it's not your opponent blocked, which is like basically 4.
Yep. For what it's worth, if you are playing Syndra and you have this card, you have to make sure you actually have daggers, because if you don't control any daggers, you're not going to do any damage.
Okay,
so then
it does also trigger like Poison Blade and all that stuff. So Syndra has like a bunch of extra reasons why this card could be.
Yeah, you definitely would play this card in Syndra. I'm just saying, make sure you don't mess that one up. Okay, so then my third card is a generic Shelter from the Storm. This is a modal card. It's generic, 0 cost, blocks for 4 as a defense reaction, but it has an activated ability where you can discard it. So meaning you have to discard it from your hand, just like the windups. You can't use that ability if it's in the arsenal. The next 3 times you'd be dealt damage this turn, prevent 1 of that damage. So this card, I think, is a lot of people have realized that this is at least better than Fade Foreseen. It's still up in the air whether it's better than Sink Below or not, but I'm personally of the opinion that it is. Just the fact that when this card is in your hand, it's basically a blue in terms of preventing arcane damage, but it's better than a blue when preventing arcane damage, because oftentimes what happens when you're playing against something like Aurora, she may start her turn off with like a Burn Up Shock, for example, and you want Burn Up Shock and then respond with Channel Lightning Valley, where you really want to prevent that arcane, but there's a chance that that's the only arcane that she's doing on the whole turn. So spending a whole card to prevent that is like a very bad value proposition. Whereas now, not only are you stopping that point of arcane, you're also helping yourself cover the next 4 breakpoints by essentially adding +1 value on defense to both of those. And then if Aurora isn't having a turn like that, you had Shelter from the Storm, then you can set it, use it as a defense reaction. So I think it's one of those cards that sometimes defense reactions can get a bit cloggy if you have multiple in your hand versus decks that are doing split damage. But now I think you can reasonably get value from the 4 block aspect of it, as well as the preventing 3. And the fact that this card just exists in the game means that you can't necessarily go for greedy lines with these dagger decks of relying on, okay, I'm going to flick this dagger and then I'm going to get the resource. So I'm not going to block with this card on the turn prior because I'm going to, I perceive that it's guaranteed I'm going to be able to go for this play line because of Flick Knives. This card can just shut that down and essentially like make your opponent IP themselves a card because they, assume that their flick effect was going to go uncontested. So I think, this is like an amazing card to exist in the game. And I'm kind of glad they made it at this time, because it would have been like a little bit weird to play with in the last format. It would have definitely been interesting to have an effect like this, but I feel like it would have been super strong in the last format. And now we've kind of fleshed out decks more to have a wider meta, and it's not as annoying to play against if you're playing a split damage hero.
Card is gross. Like it's
Yeah.
super strong. I never
Like
thought
best
we'd see
card in
another,
the game contender, I think.
Yeah. Never thought I'd see another 0-for-4 pushed. Because we had Sink Below and Fate forever. And
we were
like,
talking
those
about
are
this shit getting
good
banned,
enough.
and they made one better. Like,
Yeah. This card is
But I think it
insane.
also works, personally. Like,
I think so too.
I think it's
It's
kind of
more defense
necessary with
reaction.
what was printed.
Yeah, I also think the game's at a point where we kind of can't have decks that are just like the old stupid Bravo fatigue decks. Like maybe some metas those are allowed to exist, but we have enough decks that can punish like just decks that just block. And I feel like that's a good spot to be in to make more of these. Like if we had these during like fatigue Golden meta and it's just like another 0-4D react, that might just be too much. But the fact that like basically nobody's talking about including this and Fate for Scene in the same deck, I think is a pretty good sign.
Yep.
It might get
this is
awkward
also-
when they unban blue CYB.
Maybe.
I could see that being an issue.
I will say, I think we're going to feel the ramifications of this card continually moving forward. It's like probably not fully understand how it's going to impact matchups, but this is definitely one of those cards where like if you have a matchup that's like pretty close, this could really give you like a 5% edge into a matchup that makes it all of a sudden makes a deck playable at like major tournaments. Like this is a very impacting card for a lot of matchups, and we don't know the scale of that yet.
Agreed.
Yeah, Haunting
say-
Rendition was like one of the best cards in Viserai.
Yeah.
But the huge downside was that you like couldn't set it. So like they basically just made a Haunting Rendition that now you can also set it, and it's also Sink Below when you have it set. It's insane.
It's also just like that ability. Like we mentioned Aurora for a little bit for an example, but this card I think like puts Aurora down a peg. Like it's that good against this hero. Like it counters her power turns almost by itself, and that's really really good. Like her turns where she's like, I'm gonna have 5 cards, and you're either going to block, and then my stuff's gonna hit anyway, and you're gonna look like a fool, or you're gonna take 1,000,000 damage, and I'm gonna get a bunch of value. And this card, I feel like, lets people reasonably block those turns consistently, and also is just more 0-for-4D reacts because, of course, that's what Aurora needed in the meta. Is more.
Yeah, I think this set pushes her out quite a bit.
Yeah,
she could probably use a couple of upgrades in the near future,
like an armory deck.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
It's almost like they did.
But on Shelter, like this card is so nice on turn 0, is what I very quickly learned. Like usually you're getting chipped by like one attack daggers, like Nugo's dagger. Like no, just like skip that. There's a bunch of like Masco momentum decks that go like I don't know 1 into 4, 2 into 4. You can just like cover breakpoints on turn 0 and not even sweat it.
Yeah, and just anything. Noah mentioned like Flick Knives, but like Pain in the Backside, for example, like you could just discard this against Pain in the Backside and be like, okay, I'm gonna it's like slightly worse value, but I'm gonna carry over a block to the next thing, and that could be like very relevant, right? Or we mentioned Flick, but like daggers for 1, like you play against Syndra and they have their like 2-card 8 with what was your card, the go again card? Blood Runs Deep? Like they go there like 2-card 8 with Blood Runs Deep, and they're like, you can't block this, and you're like, well, I can. And this is just going to be like one of the most flexible defensive cards forever. Right? Like this card's just ridiculous.
And it's not only good into aggro, like it's so absurdly good against like Assassin, like New specifically, because like 4 block D reacts, exactly what you want in the matchup. Sometimes they go over by 1. Like sure, prevent that and your next thing, or you can prevent a dagger and.
Yeah, especially with New having like 2 real daggers now. Like they think their turn's going to be misblade into Hunter's Clave into like turn, and you're just no.
Yeah, I think a super common playline too is with Prognosis. Like you don't know if they're going to give it +3 or if they're going to mask you, and it's just like covers for both eventualities.
Yeah.
Oh no, I really like the card, but I agree with Cody that like this impact is absurd. Like this is like game breaking.
This set kind of feels like FAB 3.0 because like there are a lot of cards in this set that are probably going to have massive ramifications on the game moving forward for the next several years. is like, that's how this set feels to me. And that's not how every set feels. Like,
Yeah.
but this one has like cards where you're just like, this is going to be around for a
And
while.
it's also
Where,
like immediately going to affect the meta. Like,
yeah,
it's very
immediately affects it,
obviously, like-
and it will be affecting it for the next few years. And those cards will continue to warp the meta moving forward.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
Yeah, you can see that they're gonna like balance each other out currently, but I agree. Like as things start to not be played, it's gonna be very warping.
it was like I don't remember. It was one of the spoiler days. It was like after all the assassin cards came out, and I was like getting ready for the shower, and I thought about tweeting, and I was like, I think I want to tweet that this is like the best set that's ever been printed, and then I like decided not to, but like I think it's a contender, especially if the limited format is good, which we've had 2 good limited formats in a row, and like
Well, I think on release it's like the best not close.
yeah, like
We'll see how it actually plays out. But
impact
it's just like Cody
immediate-
said, like you need all of these cards. Like
yeah.
every single card in the set, you need a
Yeah.
play set of.
Like in terms of like immediate impact, and it looks to just like help it's just super, like it just does everything a set is supposed to do, and we'll see how it actually pans out. But
it might do too much, to be fair.
yeah, that would be my
I'm a
view.
little worried that this set is doing too much.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry,
But
we'll
it'll
see.
sell.
I wouldn't worry that it doesn't change the meta up enough. If you were tired of the old meta,
Well,
actually, it's different.
it might make the old meta even stronger.
Yeah, but it's
As
all
we've seen in
different.
the
It's
past.
because it has new stuff. It's just maybe too good. But we'll see.
Okay, let's go into podcast questions. These questions are asked by premium members of Discord. If you'd like to ask questions of the podcast, follow along with the Hero of the Month, which is Vincent this month. Ask questions, find people to practice with, and a number of other benefits. Feel free to join in the link below. First question here from Codfather asks, Zen is going to LL before his RTN on the 22nd. What should he play?
Hatchatori.
What you want to play, I think.
Don't recommend.
Oh,
Don't recommend
my bad.
that.
Yeah, I don't know. What if you want to play? If you want to win, I don't know.
It depends what's not gone yet. Like,
What else
right?
is there?
Like
Enigma?
it's so far away. Like Viscerite could still be around.
Yeah, we
like that
don't
could still be good.
Yeah, I mean, if
I would
there's
just look
a
at the
deck
data
that's
of like
not,
what's been winning.
if there's a deck that's not Viscerai that you think is going to be good, and you're pretty like if you think you want to play like Enigma or New or those two, then play those. Is there anything else that's like definitely good?
Just figure it out after Memphis.
Yeah,
Like they'll be.
Yeah,
able to
I
do it.
would watch the calling and
Yeah.
Yep. I
decide
agree.
based on that. So ask us again in like 2 weeks.
Mr. Ark asks, do you think a Codex ban is in the works?
nope.
No,
No.
they don't.
I can
know,
wish
it's
so
for
hard.
it, but
Yeah.
no.
You should look up Brian Gottlieb Codex on like the internet or something and just see what the devs think about banning Codex.
I wish, but we got a lot of push cards this set, so clearly they're good with powerful cards.
Hirox Merc asks, how do you feel about the Poison Blade Syndra combo turn? And the potential for other Broken Ninjas on release following Fi and Zen.
Feels kind of like remorseless to me. Or it's just like most of the time you're just gonna eat it as an aggro deck.
I don't
It's got
I don't know.
potential.
I think the combo is amazing. I think the combo
Yep.
Syndra deck is really powerful. I think it is pretty easy to pull off and achieve in a okay amount of games. The problem is assassin decks exist, and that deck is just the deck might still be fine into assassin. I'm unsure about that, but the combo definitely is pretty hard to do with assassins right
The
now.
combo also just like doesn't do 50. Like
It does 35.
it does 35, assuming the opponent does nothing.
Correct.
Like the damage is like exponentially scaling down if the opponent is preventing these things. Like if they have a
And
shelter,
using
they
their
have a
boots,
storm,
and they're using the flexor boots,
Or just
etc.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's also not the only combo, which helps a lot.
Yeah, I think it's just like an aggro deck that has power cards that, like Poison Blade being one of those power cards that lets you scale really well. I don't think
I think-
it's anything like Stubby's Fi or like Bonzen was, because it's
Yeah, these are
not-
like the healthy power like combo turns. Because the opponent like has some agency in like stopping them taking 10,000 damage.
Yeah, sure. They have like shelter.
like, can't
or-
stop
Yeah, like
bombs.
every deck is gonna have
It's
shelter.
happening.
You just like
Yeah.
have to have shelter.
You have to have shelter or
well, like it's
The
just like
boots.
any deck you could just block the
The
deck.
boots, you have the boots, like they're literally on the board.
Yeah.
Like you're not like, oh no, I wonder if I have my boots. Like
well, that's
they're
fine,
just-
but you have to play them. Like I'm just
but
saying.
you just
like,
can choose to play them, and
the boots
you,
aren't
you
even
always
that good
draw them
there,
on the
yeah.
right turn. It's OP.
they block the daggers, so they don't get the dollars. That's like the big deal about
Oh,
them as
that
well.
makes sense. Wait,
Yeah.
do they? You
Yeah.
can just flick.
Yeah, but they usually need $2 to do 35 damage.
Okay.
$2 to $3, depending on the combo line.
Sure.
It's not going to be like the other ninjas. I wouldn't worry about
It does turn on tenacity, which
Yeah,
is the other part that you're like,
Yeah,
oh, right?
It's good.
It's
Yeah, no,
not
Sinja
really
has a lot of
tenacity,
combo lines, and that being
right? I
one
think
is
tenacity
a
cares
good
about
thing
like
does-
actual
for her.
cards. You're like
Yeah,
you're hopping about.
Yeah, it does tenacity. Does it turn on tenacity? It doesn't,
Well,
right?
Lucas knows this.
Tenacity should first of all be quiet. So, second of
You
all,
know, have you ever
it
told
should
the story
only
about when you
it
let
should
your
only
opponent
see it
tenacity
as
you for
one
20?
because it keeps moving. Like that's how it
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
Is it goes
okay.
from chain link to chain link, so it should not count for tenacity.
Have you
should be
told that
one.
story of like your opponent like tenacitying you for 20, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, I forgot it was a card. I don't know. It was like I never played against Katsu after Heavy Hitters released, and it was my winning in for top 8.
Yeah.
And then I like didn't know tenacity was a card. I didn't even lose on that turn. I lost later because I drew 4 reds, and a yellow gets me there. But that's okay.
Yeah, that was a quite sad moment.
Dude, that was really rough.
Yeah. So currently not worried about this combo for Syndra, but maybe a better version. Maybe a version comes out that's really good and it actually becomes a problem.
Yeah, it'll be impactful. How's it do against the Zen state though?
Hey, that's going away soon.
Oh, right.
Right.
Well, what do you mean wax on, wax off is legal in every hero? And Katsu has
Sure,
Fine
sure.
Center with Retrace the Past.
Sure.
I had that against
Tweedle asks, which of the new heroes, if any, intrigues you? Okay, which one do you want to explore for CC?
Honestly, all of them.
Not Fang.
I want someone else to explore Fang, and then I want to play it.
I want to play it,
Fang.
but I have no.
I
don't
was
wanna
so
build that at all.
excited before Fang, and then they showed all of his cards, and then I was no longer excited to play. Like, there's nothing good. It's all poopy reacts. Like the thing that you're.
They needed to print
a lot of
like
fours.
his type cards where like it reacts and then creates a react, and then you can react on the second one.
Yeah, it's
I
just.
think if they did that, the deck would be so much better.
Well, or I don't even know that the deck's bad. I think the deck might be really good. It's just boring because all the cards do 1.5 things, and like what, like who cares? Like it reminds me of Phi in Uprising, where all the cards are like
Ooh.
masquerading as real cards, but like in reality, they're all the same thing. Like Rising Resentment and Brand with Cinderclaw at that time, they were different. Like they do fundamentally different things. But like, bro, like it's all the same shit. Like, like Dan mentioned like 3 lines, and they all started with Draconic Head Jab. Like, we know what's up. Like Fang is like, yeah, whatever. Draconic React that doesn't do anything.
Wait, that's just called consistency.
Yeah, it's boring though. Like New has all of these different cards that all do different things, and Zen has these different cards that do different things, and Fang's cards are all 0 or 1 cost reacts that are either Draconic or rated 1 point better. And then they all just give 2 or 3, depending on how many resources they cost, and then an extra effect that is a mark or an extra plus. Like it's just boring. Like who cares? It's just not fun to build. It's like I think if you're somebody who likes a good solid hypergeometric calculator, you will like building Fang. But if you're somebody who likes to like try cards out and see which cards are better, this hero is so boring to build.
I don't know. My issue is that it just requires you to do too much for a consistent warrior deck. Like I don't want to be having to do all this. Like I have to play a Draconic reaction on my weapon to get go again, and then my next one will only have 1 and only swing in for 1, and then a lot of the good cards are only work on your second chain link, but you only have the 2 weapons, and it's like annoying. It's just like I don't want to do all these steps. I'm playing warrior, like it's and then I have to do it, or my fealties go away, and then my ability turns off, and I'm like, I'm not playing the quest. I opt out of the quest.
You talked to the NPC and you clicked on dismiss.
Yeah. I have abandoned the quest of Fang.
Yeah.
I'm most interested.
I feel like we didn't really answer that question, but we talked about which one we don't.
To play Zen out of all of the new heroes.
Until he goes away.
That's it.
No, I think all the other 3 are really exciting. I want to play Slippy a lot, but I have to wait for New to LL. So there's like no point in even like ever thinking about Slippy till then.
I don't think that's quite true, but because so it's like if you are much better than New into all the other decks, and you are reasonably unfavored into new. That's just like a deck. Like if that's a deck that's what you want to take to an event is you're like, I think there will be not very much assassin, and this assassin deck is good into the decks that exist, then this will be good. Likely, right? But I'm not sure if both of those things are going to be true enough that you would ever play this. But I don't think like giving the assassin mirrors who are not built to play around your hero ability is not that deep. Like it's probably makes you a dog into most of those matchups by a reasonable margin, but I don't think it's nearly enough to like not be playable. Like your hero ability is broken. Like it's very, very good.
Galaxy asks, what are you expecting for the meta at the Calling Memphis? Anything especially scary on your radar, or do you think it's going to look similar with some new heroes mixed in? It is a new format on the day of release. It will be primarily all of the old decks and a small smattering of the new decks.
I think we had this last week too. It'll just be some random ass decks. Like
that is what history
release weekend
us.
Calling. People are just going to play whatever they want, whatever they worked on. People will find some broken stuff. They'll bring that.
Yeah,
compared to the other broken stuff.
I think people will play new stuff more than they would have in the past for this set, but I think it depends on which set you look back at. I just think that's because the new stuff for this set is powerful enough that like if I said I want to play X deck and then I tested it for 2 days, I could lock it in like now, which I think is.
I'm just concerned about people getting cards.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like if the event was 2 days later, I would completely.
I heard that vendors will have the set on Thursday.
I know.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's
but you have to be
real
willing to
thing
like buy it all at like a premium.
Oh, people don't give a shit. People are going to do that at home anyway.
Dude,
But not enough people will. Like it'll just be the same format with a few new decks. I don't think it'll be like what the meta's supposed to look like.
I agree with that, but I think there will be new decks, but I don't think it'll.
There will
be, for sure. They'll be like right after the meta decks. It'll be like our top 4 or 5, whatever we have now, and then buy the new heroes.
Agreed.
Maybe a lot of Insight, because Insight's been popular in our area.
I think
for the last
can't
couple
be
events.
super popular though. You have to like really be a diehard to play Vincent. I feel
it has
I
been.
Don't
It's
think,
been like
average Joe picks up Vincent.
It's been like number 5 for the last 2 events, right?
Number 5 on what?
Like most played.
Who knows?
I don't know.
I have not seen any statistics like that, but
Rinzo asks, are you guys serious about Hatchet Dory for when Enigma leaves?
Yes. I don't know if it's good, but I am definitely going to try.
We will find out.
Yeah. A lot of the people on the team just love playing that deck. So if we can ever find an excuse to play the deck again, then
it's also like a really good deck that didn't lose anything. It's only gotten better since we last played it. It's just that the other decks are good, and there was one matchup that's really hard, and that just kind of made it not reasonable to play. But like, it's a good deck. Like you have really good numbers. You're very flexible. Like you don't really have bad matchups if Enigma is either not bad or LL'd.
I think Zen has to go too.
Maybe Zen as well.
Jaros is just too much value.
Potentially, yeah. And I
and Fisterai is too much as well.
Maybe, yeah. Like there's a bunch of decks where it's like it's slightly behind the top, but if numbers are good, this deck's broke. Like if assassins are everywhere, this deck's probably very good.
Yep. Second question. What do you think about Ira with the new retrieve cards? I think that is a pretty good way to play Ira.
I think Ira's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was
Ira's
very sad.
Playable.
I was very sad when they got revealed because it immediately like flipped the Viserai matchup a lot. I feel or like a lot of times how I was beating Ira was like stranding them with cards in hand, but now they just like have more free access to go again to be able to push their hand. So
it's like have 3 more 0/4s in their deck.
Yeah, exactly. It's like kind of what Ira needed to fix those types of matchups where they could punish her for not being able to use her whole hand.
Yep. Millen asks, do you think we needed more 0-cost 4-block D-Reacts?
Well, we didn't need them, but boy,
we did not need them.
No, but this effect, I think, is currently needed.
Yeah. I think this card is less about the fact it's a 4-block D-React, but more about they printed a card that has the exact same text but doesn't block, and they needed to make a Majestic version. So then they just like made it a D-React, because what else could the card possibly be?
Yeah,
and like we needed the effect of blocking wide with one card.
Yeah.
That just like wasn't a thing before.
yeah. I don't think this is like we have three. It's not we have three more 4 block D reacts. It's this 4 block D react slot in your deck just got better, and this effect exists now. I don't think it's like they're printing too many 0 for 4 D reacts. It's just like this is just a complete upgrade. Like it's not like just because that's not like a slot that, like I was saying earlier, you can't like increase the number of those in your deck really. Like playing 9 4-cost D reacts is so suspicious. So like really it's just a strict upgrade, right? It's like if they just like made CNC just a better card.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say it, but it feels like this opens up space for more 0 for 4 D reacts.
Yeah,
So you're not going to play 24 of these in a deck, right?
I hope
Surely.
Surely.
You would try, but
I hope this is
It depends, like
but
in like a Fang world, right, where you get to a point where your cards are all free, you can kind of justify playing these types of things where you maybe only need to spend 1 resource on a turn or 0. So it's like fine to draw a bunch of D-Reacts.
WeMad asks, if Arachne Marionette becomes meta relevant, do you think the dice rolling nature of her ability will bring more or less outrage than the dice rolling ability of Scabskins?
less.
Less.
It would be more focused on like the legitimacy of dice, I think, because it happens more frequently.
I think there's just so many fewer outcomes that are directly bad. It's basically just if they hit trapdoor. Like if they hit trapdoor, get an inertia trap, that inertia trap gets them a full extra card out of you, then that's like pretty feels bad.
But
especially if they're doing it off of like
Black Widow is a monster.
Black Widow as well. It's just like also just like usually.
How is Black Widow good? It just like gives you +3 and makes you banish a card from your hand.
Yeah, that's just like plus a full card. That's just like.
Yeah, but it's like face up on the table that is something that could happen.
Yeah,
I
I think the fact that you have like on one end though you have like Black Widow that just like is Razor's Edge into 2 for 1, and then on one hand you have like Orb Weaver. Like I feel like that might create some feels bads where it's like.
I think if you actually play with it, you'll see that that's not the case. Like the base Arachne form bumping your thing to 4 and giving go again is pretty good when they're marked because it lets you play out your hand.
Agreed.
And like for example, say you attack with a 0 for 3, and you have 2 cards in hand, and you're doing like Black Widow thing, right? If they just like if they block for 6, you're kind of like in a weird spot where you have to also have drawn a react and an assassin card to pitch to use the ability to actually get some value. Whereas like with the other Arachne, because it presents the breakpoint, you're forcing them to have reactions from their side.
So I'm not necessarily saying that like Black Widow is much better than base or that it's like broken, but I think that there will absolutely be feels bads where like my opponent could have flipped into Orb Weaver, but instead they flipped into Black Widow and then they drew Bonds of Agony, Razor's Edge, and just fuck my whole turn. Like I was gonna have a broken turn. And then
that doesn't fuck your turn because they flip at the end of their turn. So then you play your whole turn with the knowledge of their Black Widow.
No. But you'll draw your next turn, and maybe it's a power turn. And I'm not saying that it's bad design or anything. I'm just saying it definitely can create feels bats. Like Widow can absolutely.
Yeah, I think the only feels bad is Trapdoor, where Trapdoor is just getting them like value.
This is nonsense. If you just like draw up a 4-card hand that like wants to play all 4 cards, like of course,
game that someone loses to this hero is going to be a feels bad.
Maybe.
It doesn't matter which one they flip into.
It doesn't matter because it's Assassin. But it's Assassin. Like it always feels bad to lose to Assassin. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
that's the nature of the class.
Scabs is way worse.
Scabs is worse though. Yeah.
Yeah,
the swing is just like so absurd. It's between like your opponent loses immediately and they get to cheat and take 3 actions, play all the cards, but the action points don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like that range is ridiculous.
Just skip it.
B-Nubs asks, sorry if it's been covered, but what is the lore behind Sir Gregory?
Yeah, we needed a logo, and someone drew up a logo and had this funny night guy. No, I think it was actually like we had like 4 to 8 cuts, and we were looking through them, and like Yonji absolutely did not like the original Sir Gregory, but I think Cody and I loved him because he had like these silly little sandals and like ninja pants on. If you look at like the silhouette. So then we just ran with it.
Yeah, because he had like the old style helmet thing as well.
Yeah.
Just like he looked
a little derpy, but like just enough. It was just some graphic artist's proposal image for some kind of generic knight fantasy person.
And then
So
it
it should-
eventually got professionally done after that.
And he needed a name. I don't know who called him Sir Gregory.
I don't know either.
Oh, dude, this is so disappointing.
Oh, I forget.
Yeah, it's not that
No.
exciting of a story.
It's okay. It's not
It's
that
really not.
exciting. We don't need to. No. We get it.
Fair.
We'll have to work on an exciting backstory for Sir Gregory
I'll remember
in the future.
eventually.
No, we'll have to just make one up, like
True.
because the
No,
actual one is not that
remember,
exciting.
We'll remember what it was. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, remember the actual real story. This is not the
Yeah.
real
He
story.
like doesn't represent us or like represent anything specific. He's just like a derpy knight guy. We liked his flip flops.
That's the old story. That's not a real story. We'll remember the real story later. But okay, it's been a very long podcast. We got to get out of here.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. So long.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope here,
Seven
but
envelope
What we could do
in
here is go ahead
darkness.
and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of envelope and darkness.